So you're writing in Obsidian.
Yes.
What are you writing about?
Um, Most things, whenever I'm coming up with an idea or something's popping up, I just start writing in Obsidian now. So I used to write in the editors themselves that I was writing for. So when I was writing for Substack, I'd write in Substack. When I was writing for Kit, I wrote in Kit. And I'm like, yeah, if things break, I lose everything. I don't want to deal with that anymore. And it would be quite nice to have a repository of all of the things that I'm saying so I can start kind of connecting all the dots and just seeing what happens as I'm going.
So
Um,
how are you
but
connecting the dots in Obsidian? Just like simple link out to file.
yeah, just simple link out to a file if I see something. Oh yeah, that reminds me of this. Oh yeah, that reminds me of that. Oh yeah, that reminds me of this. Oh yeah, it reminds me of that. It's just, it's nothing very exciting. It's just I create a new doc in my project, start writing, then when it's done, copy and paste it into where it goes.
Yep, yep. I mean, I'm pretty much the same. And that's so I got an email from someone. What was it, last week? I don't know. I've been so busy. Um, but yeah, I got an email from someone that was saying, "Oh, the Thomas Frank Ultimate Brain template that you recreated in Obsidian. I think the video is like a year old. They said, oh, with the new Bases plugin, core Bases plugin, could you redo the video and like show different ways of doing it?" I'm like, well, I could, but no. Like I I don't have tasks and projects inside of Obsidian. I have a file which I class as a project, but I do the management side of all of that in Morgan. Like I bring the file into Obsidian because I don't want to copy and paste the link from Obsidian to Morgan, which is really nice, really handy, and I can move the due date in Morgan and it moves it in Obsidian. Again, really handy. But all the scheduling of the task and the moving the task around of when I'm going to do it and when I'm not going to do it, that's done in Morgan, not Obsidian. So the task stuff, not in Obsidian. Project stuff, not in Obsidian. Resources stuff, it's not really a resource, it's just a file.
Mm.
Like, all you need to do is be able to find the file. How do you find the file? Use a really basic basis view, or just have it in a folder that says active file.
I literally have bases just to see what I've got if I want to look at it, but I barely look at it. Just is I know what I when I come into Obsidian, I know where I'm going, so I just go there.
Yep.
I don't really think about, oh well, where next? Oh, what am I doing? And what am I like? I know what I'm doing whenever I open my Obsidian.
So do you have like a default kind of like setup with the panes of where you are? Like
No.
are you a one pane person or a two pane? Or
So
you
I stick with one pane most of the time. When I have two things I want to like go through, then I'll add another pane and pop it up. But outside of that, no, I'm just working in one pane all the time.
interesting. So I guess the question that springs to mind then is why Obsidian and not like Microsoft Word?
Because I don't have a Microsoft Word account, so I don't have the
Hmm.
software, and
Docs?
I just I don't want my stuff. I like it being local. I just like the locality of it being on my computer, and I can just write without any pop-ups and distractions from all the other platforms. Like it's very much why I started using Notion, because I started using Notion because it didn't have all of the fancy style features that you have in Google Docs. Whenever I go into Google Docs, I'm more likely to over design it and focus so much on the way it looks versus what I'm writing. Whereas in
Changing all the
Obsidian, my
formatting.
focus is just, yeah, I just don't care about the formatting because there isn't really that much formatting. There can be, but I have to go and find it and spend extra time and blah, 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 which I just don't.
That is fair. That is fair. I think the formatting that I use, which isn't really formatting, is just the headers.
Yeah, that's literally, I use headers, I sometimes use quotes, I sometimes use bold. I'm just looking for a piece now.
I never use bold. I
Yeah.
use the highlight when, but the thing is, I only use a highlight when I'm going through a piece and I'm
Mm,
trying to time how roughly long it's gonna be, and I'll like highlight the number so when I'm scrolling through, I can see it's there. Or if
mm.
I'm writing a note to myself, I put that in a highlight. So if I'm writing through something, I'm like, I need to check this source. I would just write source and then highlight the word source, and that's it. So when I go through, I can immediately see, oh, look, there's a highlighted thing there. I need to pay attention to that. Uh, and then because my titles are all different colors, it's
Oh,
just,
cool.
yeah, my heading one is an orange, and then my heading two is a sort of like a lighter orange, and then heading three is a light blue. So I can immediately see where I'm at, like in the script. But I say script, they're not always scripts. I, this I think I said this last time we were talking. I'm treating the YouTube channel as like my PKM system. It just is in Obsidian. So when I did a video, the most recent video on Justin Sung, I was going through. Essentially, I watched the video and it's like, I want to write some notes on this. So I started to write
Mm,
some notes on this, and then I thought, you know what? Let's just turn it into a video because it's refining my thoughts and using references and creating arguments about what the video was. Um, and I posted the video. I haven't looked. It could have done bad. It could have done good. I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest. And I've written all of that inside of my Obsidian, and then I've linked out to all of the past. I mean, they are videos on the channel, but past pieces that I've done. So I feel like my Obsidian, my active Obsidian at the moment, is kind of being shared online through a video, but it's just my Obsidian. And so whenever I need to reference a piece of work, and by piece of work, it's kind of just piece of thinking. Like whenever I've done
mm.
a sustained amount of focus on something, thinking about something for a sustained amount of period of time, I can just reference out to that one page. That it might be like 2,000 words long, 3,000 words long. Like the article itself is enough. And I thought about publishing the articles. I did with the first one, and then I was like, no, because I'm writing to myself. So I'm not writing as writing. I'm writing as talking because I want to be able to consume it in the future for me, which is one of
Yeah.
the reasons I put it into the video. Like, I don't want to write as if it's an article because then I won't read it.
Mm.
I want to be able to quickly skim through this page because I don't know. I think the last time we spoke about writing, you write in longer paragraphs than I do, longer
Yes.
sentences and paragraphs than I do. I want to be able to go into a page. I'm just going to go into one of the older ones. I don't have anything linked in this one. Yeah, so some of the I'm looking at the Retire Cognitive Load Theory script page, right?
Mm.
And there are a lot of headings. There are a lot of sentences, and I just don't want to read through it.
Mm.
But then when I go to one of the more recent articles that I've done or have written, they are much shorter. The sentences are shorter, the sections are shorter in the headings, and there are links to the papers. Whether I've done anything with it or not, that's not necessarily relevant. But I've got Resemblum and Robert 2007 Hearing Shape of Object. Like that is the title. That is the link that goes back to the ecological acoustics page. But I know what the source is about. Hearing shape of object. I know who wrote it, I know when it was written, and I can see that one in the title of the article, but also in the thing that I'm writing.
Mm.
If it was something I've actually written about, it will probably be how I would search for it, which is how I'm titling and packaging the videos. Like, how would I search for the balance bike, the balance bike study video? I would look for balance bike. I would search balance bike in my YouTube search. Is it going to be good for YouTube search? No. Is it going to be good for browse? Probably not either. But I'm not that fussed because my Obsidian is just kind of like like I said, my PKM written in words that make sense to me in brief sentences. I mean, that sentence is 5 words and it doesn't even have it spelt right. Uh, like
Yes,
front.
I must admit, when I was so as I'm going through the first chapter of the book, I was not caring so much. It's been interesting because I'm now in the stage of like writing post first chapter because I finished reading the first chapter. I was like, okay, cool. There's loads in here that I feel like I'm just on the surface of. And so I was like, oh, there is, what do I get from this straight away? Like, what am I actually getting from this, from just the chapter alone? Because I could go and keep going and keep going through the whole book, and then I've got the whole book, but that doesn't make sense because there is something in this chapter that is still important. I was like, okay, cool. What am I going to pull from it? What matters for me right now? What is important for me and what do I care about from this first chapter? What's interesting? What am I curious about? What questions do I have from the first chapter?
I'm curious with your writing, because obviously we spoke about this last time, and now that you finished your first chapter, what are your headings?
So I have the just rough notes. Um, so I just had the chapter one introduction, and then from there I'm pulling stuff out into other pieces of content. So I'm creating other notes from this chapter. So the first section that I had was negotiating with life, which I then pulled out and started writing content with, which from writing this piece of content, I came up with an email idea that I really wanted to talk about. So pulled that out, created the email. Like I'm kind of pulling pieces out and creating content from content that
Hmm.
matches like my energy level of what I can actually do versus spending all my time trying to do all of it. It's like, okay, cool. This this project that I'm working on right now is taking every single ounce of my energy and sanity and time. So I'm gonna finish this. And then while I'm waiting, I've got this piece of content that I'm like, oh yeah, this is a an idea around like why are we still talking about not being broken and how so surface level it is and how sick of it I am hearing of, oh, you're not broken, I'm not broken, we're just different, blah blah blah. Okay, cool. What about why does that even matter? Cool, we're not broken. Now what? Like
Yeah.
now what? So I'm not broken, yet I still struggle with all these things. So why are we just talking about the fact that we're not broken instead of figuring out how to do the things we're not able to do? Which is what I pulled out from the first kind of introduction of like there's a whole realm of discussion around us being disabled and needing things being done to us and things happening to us to make it easier for us to so yeah, sure, but also I find my own way around. Like I don't need it. Yes, having like ways of working that are more easier for me is great and all, but that's also not practical because what would be good for me is not good for someone else or is not good for like the infinite amount of other things. So there has to be some form of figuring out what's best for as many people as possible, which is what happens. Which is why it sucks. So what then? I just sit and do nothing. Well, no, I'm not broken. I just work differently like everybody else. So it's just improvising life. And it was
That
like,
so that to me, I mean, it emphasizes all of the same things that we would say in ecological psychology, repetition without repetition, representative practice. Everyone is developing skills, so you don't get them, you don't acquire a skill and now you've got it. It is ongoing development. You're developing abilities and capabilities depending on your action capabilities, etc., etc. All of the same sorts of things we would typically say, but it's instead of it being in a sporting context, obviously the book is about a life, which is really, really, really vague context. I think it's a disability as described by the individual, because disability
hmm,
described by others is a really poor way to describe disability, I think. Because I don't
yeah,
think it's accurate, because it doesn't represent how that individual is feeling with their capabilities. Because, as the DSM-5 very poorly puts, disability, you can be disabled but not be qualified as disabled because it's not hindering you enough according to other people's metrics. You're like, well, it's like me. I'm not disabled according to the DSM-5 because it doesn't negatively impact my ability to function in the world as it is because I have found other solutions. That doesn't negate the fact that I can't see and I can't hear. But
mm,
it, so I am disabled, but I'm not. disabled enough according to some measures and some metrics, which is why I think disability should be measured individually, which, yeah, that was kind of like justifying the point there. And I think the ecological approach, when you bring it in, the language and the way at which we're thinking about these problems, you bring this in, a lot of people agree with,
Yes.
which is nice. It's comforting. But then when they try and use explanations, like they'll on the surface level, they go, "Oh yeah, 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 of course, yeah, that makes sense." And then they try and explain the solution, and then they go back to something else. You're like, that doesn't work. It doesn't match the solution. It's almost like saying, okay, the answer is an apple, and then you start adding numbers, and you're like, no, because you have to do replacements, representations. You have to do replacements in all of the way that you're explaining these things, and you end up finding a different answer. You started saying apple is the answer, and you were like, okay, 1 + 2 = 3. Okay, so our answer is now X. And you're like, yeah, but an apple isn't X. It might be an
Mm.
X, but it might be a banana. Like, it could be something completely different. I know this is a mathematical explanation. Why we went to maths, I don't know. Probably because I've got ecological maths on the mind. But
Oh, fun.
well, yeah, I'm looking at Abraham's work again because someone in the comment section about 7 months ago said, "Oh, can you explain how this works as a maths teacher, please?" Because it was a sports coaching example that I used, and I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that," and I haven't done it. So, but I'm working through the books, and I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get this ecological maths done. So I keep like peering into the file each every while. But yeah, so the book to me, I haven't read the introduction chapter yet, but I'm intrigued to hear the headings because the first heading, Navigating Life, is not a heading I would make, which is why I'm intrigued to see like what the content of that section is. Do you have other headings as well?
Yeah, so it was oh, it wasn't actually navigating. It was negotiating with life.
Oh, that
Was the
might have been me
first was the first chapter. Yeah. So it's
misremembering.
negotiating with life was the first kind of heading, which ended up turning into a piece of content. And then it was a group of ideas, which kind of goes into the like what it is that this book is talking about. It talks about affordances, it talks about all of those pieces. Then I had the mechanics of activist affordances, where it broke it down into performance affordances and canonical affordances. And then the final part was neurodiversity, a shrinking of affordances, which discusses the shrinking model that they have around this. And that
I
was
mean,
the and
I'm very interested to hear more about those things. Have you done much content on those things? I saw a newsletter that came out, but that didn't feel like book related.
no, that one was it came from the book, but wasn't specifically book related. Because this it was me because
Okay, this is a viewer saying do more stuff about the book. This is a viewer
oh,
request.
cool. I will do some more stuff about the book. But like each of these very much can be a piece of content in itself.
I mean,
Like,
just the title on its own. That's why I asked for the heading. The
mm,
heading on its own is interesting enough for me to go, I want to know more.
mm,
The newsletter that you had, I it felt like it came from the book. And as skim read it, as I skim read it through, I was like, nah, yes, it's from the book, but there's no like, oh, that's cool, or oh, that's an interesting thought.
no, there was no, this was me just playing on the edge of the book
Yeah,
versus going, let's just dive in. It was,
even if it's just like the first page of the book and you just diving in, I'm like, yes, please.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, the first piece is negotiating with life because I think that one's quite an interesting one that it was the first thing that came up for me, which is when I was able to bring in like other aspects of myself into the piece of content, which is negotiating with life, where I talk actually quite a bit about performance. So I kind of take the negotiating with life as the introduction, then pulled in the performance aspect because obviously musician, and the as if and as is. which I found really interesting. That drew me in. So, negotiating with life is probably going to be the first piece of content because it's the one that's most developed.
And I imagine it's also the one at the start of the book.
Pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah.
I,
It was the first thing that I got from what I was reading. It was the first real, like, headline. Well, yeah, it was the first heading I got from the book was like, this is all about negotiating with life. It's that performance aspect of going between like what is actually there and what could be, and that
yeah.
improvisational aspect.
Where affordances comes into that, I'm extremely uh because I know some of the other terms that they've used in the books, obviously I flicked through it. I'm like, I really want to know how they're using the word affordances and affordance because they've like added bits at the start of affordances. So I feel like their thinking is going to be fairly unique from the. Like, I can't imagine it matching a lot of the literature around affordances because of the way that it's being used. So I want to know how it's being used. But obviously that's part of the content. I mean, when I look at the so ecological acoustics is the next chapter of the book that I'm going through, and the headings sound. That's just the heading sound, one word. Then hearing objects, hearing silent objects, hearing bouncing versus breaking, hearing reachability, hearing a gap, hearing time to contact. Like they're all very short, very to the point. And to me, I'm like, sound, okay, that's boring. That's a basic explanation of what sound is. Fine. But it's ecological sound, which is where some people, when they go into the video, might be like, okay, ecological sound explanation is a little bit different, but it's 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 something I can build from. Whenever I'm
Mm.
referencing ecological sound, it's there.
Mm.
But hearing objects, hearing how do you hear objects? You see objects. Hearing objects adds an element of curiosity for me in it. Hearing silent objects is even more. You're like, what? How can you hear silent things? That doesn't make sense.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
they're ideas, but the ideas are in headings. And I haven't.
I think one of the ones that drew me in was canonical affordances.
Yeah.
That one was like, oh, yeah, it's that it was commonly called common sense. It's like this is just the thing you do. This is just the thing you. This is just how you behave. It's what you're always told. It's just the common sense thing. And I'm like, yes, but it's not common sense. It never has been common sense. That doesn't make that in itself what makes it common. What makes it common sense? As like I navigate with like my two children of like the common sense things you were just told were a thing aren't a thing. They just aren't.
So I said this, I think, in the Justin video because that's the most recent one I remember talking through. And I think I said something about a social construct. One of the points that he came up with, one of the words he was using, I was like, it's a social construct. It doesn't actually measure anything in specific. It's just something that we use to help communicate ideas, but we're always communicating ideas. And common sense is another one of those social constructs that we've thrown into our language that gets tossed around all over the place. But what is common to someone isn't necessarily common to someone else because we all act differently. So when someone says common sense, it's their common sense because it's a relational property. And that's how ecological psychology describes the relationships between, well, describes the world, describes experiences. It's relational, not objective. And so common sense as a social construct is a relational property of an experience or of a behavior. And it's what Harry Heft spoke about in his lecture, what was it, 7, 8 years ago, is Gibson completely changed the way that we perceive the world, we describe perceiving in the world, because it's now relational. They're not mechanistic, objective things that we do that we either do this or we don't do this. It's a relational thing. And the relational element, instead of it being something additional that we can talk about in the past or as just a, oh yeah, it kind of depends on this thing and it kind of depends on that thing. And context is obviously important, but common sense says, no, no, it's not a afterthought. It is the starting thought. And that's what's
Yeah.
radically different about ecological psychology, which Yeah, common sense to what? Like everyone is really good at driving. Everyone thinks they're above average at driving. Oh, it's common sense that everyone can drive. No, it's not. Most people can't drive. If most people could drive, there wouldn't be so many accidents.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. So the headings that I use the headings as like milestones in the script, but also as ideas. They're not atomic notes, but they're ideas within an idea. It's a nested structure of a system.
See,
And
it's interesting because when I pull out content, I do create another note for it. At the moment, that is the like easiest
why?
way is I pull it out. I am just as intrigued as you are as to why. I think I like the blank space, the space just to let the ideas kind of emerge and almost reset. So that might be what it is. But then at the same time, I'm like,
So do you
why?
think because some people like being able to zoom into a bullet point and just see the bullet point.
I think it might be that. It might be the fractal nature of it all, like being able to just zoom in and then zoom back out again. Because I think as I'm thinking about this, I know what I'm going to do. Once I finish making the pieces of content, I'm going to merge it all into chapter one and have it all in there after I'm done, so that I can zoom in and out.
So what I understand that, but where my hesitancy is with doing that is that I personally lose context. Like if I
Mm.
was to zoom into sound and talk about ecological sound, the relational element to the next section, i.e., hearing objects, is now lost because I'm focused in on sound. Then when I come out, I might start writing hearing objects, and then I realize actually the stuff I wrote about in sound doesn't actually relate to hearing objects because I've gone elsewhere, because I've thought of other topics. So instead of it being I'm going to write about sound, I want to write about ecological acoustics, chapter one, ecological acoustics.
Mm.
And I don't want to separate too much those headings because now I'm talking about that thing as a separate system outside. I want to try and keep it together as much as possible. So I see them as two different types of content. You've got the nested content of the heading inside of a chapter,
Mm.
but then there is the broader relational content around what ecological sound could mean. Because ecological sound in the broader context isn't about ecological acoustics. It's
Mm.
about the perceptual system as an organism, and sound not being a sense, but sound being something that we use or an energy source that we detect. So, sound as a sense isn't really what it is that I'm going to be talking about in the broader sense because it's an energy source that we detect through our perceptual system. But in the like part of the system that is ecological acoustics, there is another part which is sound. And so when I zoom in, I imagine if I was to talk about sound, I wouldn't be talking about ecological acoustics. I would be talking about our perceptual system using vibration as an energy source to detect, which I don't think would relate very well with hearing objects. Obviously,
Mm.
it's related, it has to be related because they are within the same system, but I see myself going off on far more tangents, which I think would lose the relevancy to the other topics that are continuing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. As I was listening to you, I decided to take when like
I saw
the
you tapping.
new yeah, the new article I was going to write has been merged into the negotiating with life, where I've got negotiating from life and I've started that, and then there's the heading the balance between what is and what could be created, where and then the next part is when common sense doesn't make sense, which was the another article I was going to write, which then introduces um like canonical affordances.
So with the book, because the book has already got structure, they've already
Mm.
thought about what's next. So the way that I am approaching it, which again you can do in your own way. So I'm not saying whatever. The way I'm approaching it is because you've got those sections. Whilst you're writing the first one, what I find myself doing sometimes is looking at the next heading, so I've got the outline in the far right. So I'll be writing it and I think, oh, I could talk about this. And then I look at the far right and I go, actually, you know what? It probably would actually be better off suited in that next section.
Mm,
Or actually, it's not relevant at all here. That's a different topic. And that's where I link out to a source, which is another piece of content. So I can reference back to this one that is a bit more higher level that I'm talking about. But then I can go into more depth about that one thing over there. So when I'm doing my research, which is why I've got the whatever the reference was that I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to pick a different one because I can't be asked to scroll to it. How do you say that? Uh, Kunklerpeck, Kunkler, Peck. So Peck 2000 hearing objects. What I did is there was a section in the book that said wooden frame hanging different plates inside, right? That is my line. That is the point that I'm going to turn into a sentence that will make sense throughout that section. But that intrigued me enough to go, oh, I want to explore more here. So I went and found a source, which obviously was linked in the book anyway, had a read through and thought, oh, that's really interesting. I like those ideas as well. I want to talk about this, but instead of talking about it elsewhere, I created a note, created a link to the note that's really obvious. So the name, the date, and then roughly what the thing is, how I would search for it, and then put some bullet pointed ideas in that file, but then went back to what it is that I'm talking about. So
mm,
it's a it's a constraint that I've added into my writing to mean that I can still focus on the piece that I'm working on and not dive down some rabbit hole for endless time and then never get anything done. But the notes are still there and they're still related back to where I was thinking.
mm,
And so when I actually get to writing about Kunkler and hearing objects, when I get to that, I will actually have a full chapter expression of those ideas and potentially other pieces of content later on in the book that relate back to that because it's a file I can dip back into. So instead of writing it potentially prematurely, I have all this other relational content that can go into it. Uh,
mm,
and as I'm writing, I imagine the same sorts of things will happen. It's why I'm writing some of the discussions now because I'm at a point in the book, like I can see how all of these topics relate to what other people are saying. Justin, Hank, Mike, those three discussion videos I've got on the channel, I'm relating them back to, and it makes it easier for me to discuss the points with references now because I don't have to go looking for references because I've already got those references in the articles I've already written.
mm,
But if you try and do it all in one, what I found is that there aren't enough constraints for me when writing.
mm,
So
mm,
maybe the constraints I've added are because they've emerged through the problems I've had with publishing papers, articles, videos, and the problems I've had with finishing, in air quotes there, pages. So I've added those constraints in to help.
Did you actually use the headings of that were given in the book? Just to
No,
rewind a little bit. So you don't use the headings in the book, they're your headings based on what you've read.
no. So, because I've got the book open, obviously, the first heading in the book is Ecological Acoustics, a description of sound for listening and doing. I've got sound. Then the next one is information about surfaces. I have hearing silent objects, then hearing objects. So information about surfaces is a higher up heading, which I've just ignored. Hearing objects is a heading I've actually used, but I've probably brought in information from the last heading into that. Then hearing occluding objects. I've got hearing silent objects, so occluding I've got rid of. Hearing what happened, bouncing versus breaking. I've got bouncing versus breaking. Uh, Information about relationships between animals and surfaces. Yeah, I got nothing on that. Hearing what is reachable, hearing reachability. So they are similar, but I've reworded them into my own language, and that's only the first take.
Mm,
So when I actually write, they might be slightly adjusted depending on how the content of that section goes, because
mm,
I will describe it in the most relatable way that I have at the time. So if I go and search for it, I know. And it sometimes changes as well. I'll write something and then I will change the balance bike. I originally had the balance bike as functional variability, because that's what the study is about, functional variability. But the attractor that I was most associating the study with was balance bike, and I was searching for balance bike or balance bike versus training wheels. That's the attractor for me to that paper. Other people may have the name or the date or the numbers or the functional variability or the image, and they'll search for those things. But for me, it was balance bike. That's why now inside of my Obsidian, if I type in, I'm pretty sure, balance bike, it will come up, yeah, balance bike learning. And then I've got two sources, the citation and then the 2023 citation.
Hmm.
And so the headings are the same. If I'm looking for something in a heading, I will reword the heading for what I thought it was. If
Hmm.
I go looking for something like, I wrote about this thing in this section, what was that? I will rename the heading to the section I'm looking for. And I do the same with the videos. Do people in YouTube think it's sensationalized sometimes? Yes, but it's how I think about it.
Yeah. And you're not even doing it for YouTube.
No, people that watch it, they leave comments, and I'm like, cool. You leave comments, that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, I could do it unlisted, and I would still do it unlisted. I'd still publish the videos on YouTube unlisted because that's how I'd watch it back. I've watched back all of my own videos because I'm like, what did I say in that file again? I'm gonna watch it. I'm actually a viewer of my own channel.
That's pretty cool.
I don't think many YouTubers are actually viewers of their own channel because they've once they've finished editing the video, they're like, right, done, finished. Finish with that one. Done that experience. It's over. But no, mine are, yeah, mine are my actual notes. So yeah, so with your next piece of content, because it was going to be heading one, are you still going to do heading one, or are you just going to do it as chapter one and then abbreviate the headings a bit and then potentially do the headings as articles on their own later?
Yeah, I'm not sure, which is probably why something hasn't gone out. Because I definitely have got to myself in a bit of a stuck post, like, which bit do I? Because all of it is so interesting that I want to explore all of them at the same time.
So to me, that's you describing the problem
Yes,
and the goal-directed behavior is what we're
yes,
aiming for. You've got a problem, and we need to constrain the practice. This is the
yeah,
CLA. We need
yeah.
to. So I've added my constraints, which has helped me get to my directed goal. Albeit I am a week behind because the acoustics was meant to have gone out last week according to my schedule. But they're arbitrary deadlines anyway. They're guidelines. As I tell myself. So what I guess the question is, well, it's not a guess. The question is, what are the constraints you are going to add to your practice to achieve the goal-directed behavior you're aiming towards?
I think I'm going to look at just zooming. It's interesting because I want to zoom in, but I also want to zoom out at the same time because I feel like there is almost a lot of specificity. There's a weird balance of like too much specificity and not and it's not linking together as easily. Like each of these could be separate pieces of content, and they also feel like they're already separate pieces of content versus one kind of like flow through, which is the intention of the piece is to create something around the first chapter. But I'm creating like 12, which is
So,
probably where where like for me it's like there are 12 pieces of content here and I need to produce all of them at the same time, but then no, that's not the point of the that is not my aim. So it's like going back in and going, cool, what is the through line here? Like adding, I might even look at adding the constraints of the headings from the actual book and see what happens when I do that, when I constrain it from the book headings.
so what is your goal?
So my goal is to start creating content on this book because it's freaking interesting. It's releasing regular articles that explore the concepts of this book, chapter by chapter.
Okay, so to me, I don't think that I think adding a date makes sense, like an arbitrary date. It
Mm,
makes sense to me, not necessarily you. Um, and so when I have a date, I give myself a week for a chapter. Like if a chapter is really long, I give myself 2 weeks for a chapter and then I do two videos. But saying a week in a chapter means if you're going to go through that entire chapter in a week, either you're going to have to write a hell of a lot because you're going to split them all up into all the headings, or you need to constrain what it is that you're writing. But it doesn't mean that
mm.
you can't write more about those things in the future.
Yes. Yes, I feel there is almost
So you can
an
finish the book, but you haven't finished writing about the book.
yes. Yeah. I think there is a case of like I want to fully complete. If I 100% complete this chapter, then it's great. Which I think is where I've kind of gone a little that way. I don't need to 100% complete the chapter. I,
What counts as 100% complete is the question I would ask.
well, there isn't. That's
But there
the
is. 100% complete is you've read the entire chapter and you are sharing your thoughts on the entire chapter. But those thoughts could be a couple of bullet points, like an AI summary. Or those thoughts could be a couple of sentences about each heading. Or it could
mm,
be like four or five paragraphs about each heading. Or it could be an entire article about each heading. Or it could be an
that's
essay
probably
about
where
each line.
I think it's like at the moment it is an entire article about each of the core concepts of this chapter, like each of the pieces that have been pulled out from by me in this, the meanings behind what's being said. But there are like six,
Yeah, sounds about right.
about six or seven. Yeah, about seven. There's about seven concepts to write about, if that is my 100% completion,
Yeah.
which that in some ways does not make sense for what I want to achieve.
I think it makes sense once you have read the book.
Yes.
Because going into detail without having read the book means that once you've read the book, there could be other topics or points you want to elaborate on, which means you have to
Mm,
either edit the content you've already made or you need to revisit it. And if
mm,
you're revisiting and doing a second piece on something you've already written, well, why make so much effort in the first place to make the first piece?
mm,
That's why I'm not.
mm. What's the easiest thing to get out?
Well, go back to your goal. Your goal is to make content about the book,
Yeah,
which is the same goal as me.
yeah.
The constraints that I've added are the time
Mm,
and the medium. I want to have written something that I can understand, and I want to make it into a video, which means I need to have at least a couple of hours to turn it into a video. I need to be able to record it, edit out all of the mistakes, and then publish it.
mm,
Those are the constraints that I've added. They are very broad constraints. There are technically loads of other constraints in that, but high level, those are the main constraints. I put a date on it and I put a medium through it. You put a medium through it, but I don't think you've put a date on it,
no, there isn't a date.
which leaves it open to quite a lot of scope. It
Yes,
could be
I was
words. You could put a word constraint on it, but that to me limits the potential depth at which you could go in.
yeah, I think adding a date to it because something that I was thinking about as you were talking is like, yeah, I don't put Obsidian with Morgan. Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe adding that in because I'm not seeing my content in my calendar. I'm not seeing what I'm writing. So it's only when I am actively writing do I like see the content being published.
What
Which then means when everything else is louder, which this week and last week has been loud because I've had full projects put on me. So I'm doing those projects and working on those projects too. This just goes to the back versus it being something that I actually want to do.
What I love about putting the dates into Morgan is that I can really zoom out. And if I
Mm,
have a chapter a week and I put those all in Obsidian because I've got all those chapters in Obsidian, and then I put them in Morgan, and I go week by week by week. When I get to the last chapter, I look at it and go, damn, I'm January 2026. This is a long project. If I was to make this smaller and say, let's do a video per heading, oh, 7. If I'm doing one a week, that's 2 months worth of work on chapter one. Like
Mm,
now with that framing, 2 months worth of work for chapter one, and there's what, 15, 20 chapters? That's almost 2 years worth of work. No wonder you're struggling to get it all done. Like
mm,
that's what I would be saying in my head. Like even now, when I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this video, I can do this video, because I had a due date and I see it in Morgan. At the end of the week, I go, I'm not getting 7 videos done next week. That's not happening.
yeah.
Let's reprioritize, shall we?
Mm,
And then I have the deadlines of all my other work in Morgan as well, which is how I manage to keep somewhat sane. If I was to trying to do, I mean, I am struggling at the moment because I have a hell of a lot of stuff to do, um, just from various different places, but I'm still able to scope out what I can feasibly do.
yeah.
Uh, and you don't necessarily have to schedule all those Obsidian tasks in your Morgan either. You just I mean, my high level is just I put it in the all day section. Like I'm gonna do this video this week. I'm gonna do this video this week. I'm gonna do this video this week. So you could just look in the all day section and go, I'm meant to be doing that one. Do I have any time to do that? Nope. Do I have any time to do that? Nope. Yeah, oh yeah, I could do like a couple hours here.
Yeah.
So so next Sunday you'll have a chapter one done in some form maybe. If you've read chapter one, I assume you can sort of potentially distill it.
Yeah, I think I can.
I'm almost like forcing you to do chapter one because I don't have the time to read the book until like March next year.
I love that you are doing it because you don't have a choice and because I've said so.
Yeah,
Do it for me. Go. Go.
yeah. Agent, I have prompted you. I have prompted you. Now you go work. You're the same as an agent. Agents are just as intelligent as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. Um, but yes, right. Is there anything else that we want to discuss?
No? All good. Can't think of anything else.
Nice. I think that was a productive conversation.
It was a productive conversation.
Hmm. Oh, I'll speak to you next time whenever we're recording.